Hello everyone, this is Marshall Official. Welcome back to another video. And today we have a lot of very interesting updates, mostly on the front line. We do have some stuff from off the battlefield, so let's go ahead and start with that right now. Trump pledges to help Ukraine return stolen children. That's a pretty big deal that Trump would promise that to Ukraine. So he's promising that, likely as part of as a part of a ceasefire deal, Ukraine children will be returned to Ukraine. So Trump is pledging to Ukraine that will be something he can guarantee Ukraine. That is a pretty big deal. Britain to continue Ukraine weapon supplies despite Putin's demand. Putin pretty much said that in order for there to be a good ceasefire and a long-lasting deal, the West would have to stop supplying weapons to Ukraine. Not something you wouldn't expect Putin to say, but that is what he said. But obviously, Britain is pledging that they will continue to help Ukraine despite Russia's demands. Trump says his phone call with Zelensky was very good. He actually had a phone call with both Zelensky and Putin, but afterwards, Trump said that both phone calls were very good. He said that the phone call with Zelensky and the phone call with Putin ended very well, and that he claims that both sides want a long lasting peace. So, what exactly they said, what they discussed, what Putin demanded, what Zelensky demanded, was not disclosed. But according to Trump, both calls with Zelensky and Putin were very good and very productive. So for now, that's all the news from off the battlefield. Now let's move on to the battlefield itself. And we do have quite a few changes from the battlefield. So let's go ahead and get straight into that. So I'm here in the Kursk region, in what little remains of Ukraine's territory in Kursk. Russian forces over here in the Sumy region have actually made an advancement in Basivka, and we continue to advance through the center of the town, capturing more of it. Over here in Kursk, Russian forces have pushed along this tree line and captured it, along with the area to the east of it and directly to the south of it along this road as well. Ukrainian forces now only control part of Gogolevka in the town of Oleshnia. They also control the town of Gornal, because over here, the Russian forces have managed to capture the entire town of Guevo. This entire town fell under Russian control a couple days ago. Russian forces are continuing their push in Kherson, though they have slowed down quite a lot. It's clear the Russian forces are not really in much of a hurry to take the last little piece of the ground. They clearly know that they've already won, so they're not like pushing like crazy anymore. They're taking it easy just because they know they've already won. Ukraine forces have mostly pulled out anyways into fortifications to the west, but some Ukrainian units, I'm sure, do remain still in this area to safeguard it as long as they possibly can. But that is all for the Kursk part of the front line. We have no changes from the Kharkiv front line. Over here on the Oskil front line, we have some pretty important changes. Russian forces have made two new bridgeheads on the west bank of the Oskil. Russian forces pushed over the northern part of it, south of Topoli, and crossed the river, and they're now to the northeast of Kamyanki. To the southwest of Kamyanki, Russian forces crossed the river here as well, making a bridgehead to the east of Krasny Pershi. They also advanced again today and captured more of the forested area at Rapier. So at this point, Russian forces now control more ground to the west of the Oskil than the Ukrainians do. So Russian forces now control a lot of ground to the west of the Oskil, up here, right here, and of course the huge one is right down here. This is slowly turning into a pretty big deal. As Russian forces are continuing their push here. We will have to see, but the theory still remains: Russian forces might launch a major offensive from the ground they already hold, from the border, and from the Oskil to take all of this territory right here. That's of course something we could see in the future. Maybe it will happen. We don't know. But for now, these are the changes we see on the front line. These are pretty important changes. Russian forces definitely have some kind of plan for this front line right here. Moving on further to the south, we have no changes from the immediate Kupiansk front line or further to the south of it. Russian forces did make a small little advancement and captured a tree line here to the northwest of Novo Lubivka. Russian forces are still just trying to mop up the last of Ukraine's ground in the Luhansk Oblast, which is this area right here, as well, and the Serbia force down here. But for now, they are trying to capture this last little piece of Luhansk Oblast right here, and are putting pressure on that. Further here to the south, to the southwest of Bilohorivka, Russian forces made a small advance north of Verkhnekamiansky. This town is the only town standing in Russia's way of Seversk. And remember, this part of the front line right here has been Ukraine's most successful area in terms of their defense. This area has not changed pretty much whatsoever in like 2.5 years now. 2.5 to 2 years. 2.5 to 2 years. This area has pretty much not changed whatsoever. Ukrainian forces still hold their ground on this part of the front line. Seversk is not under any immediate threat. This salient has been here for a very long time, and there's no sign it's going to break anytime soon. The Russian forces are still putting some pressure on it every so often, like this area right here. Further to the south, on the Chasiv Yar front line to the north of it, Russian forces were able to capture this forested patch right here and part of this one up here, making a small advancement to the south of Orkovo-Vasukivka. As for Chasiv Yar itself, we still have no changes on this part of the front line. Russian forces control about 60% of the city, but have not pushed on beyond that so far. To the south, we have no further changes down here to the east of Stopaki. But we do have changes from the Tourette's part of the front line. Russian forces are again counterattacking here as well. Russian forces were able to cross the canal over here and capture this forested patch right here in these tree lines. This is paired with their crossing up here to the north. Russian forces also managed to advance over here, recapturing part of the area right here of Touretsk, as well as pushing along this road in the northern part of this some sort of warehouse area. It pushed up all the way up to and captured this forested patch up here along the road. Russian forces appear to be trying to strike at Ukraine's northern flank as the most dangerous part of the front, where Ukraine forces launched their counterattack and were able to recapture part of Touretsk, came from the northern part of the front line, from this area up here. Ukraine forces mostly came from this direction right here. Russian forces' strategy to probably deal with this problem could be to push into this northern area right here and capture this area up here. That is all for the Tourette's front line. Moving on, Russian forces made a minor advance and captured this tree line right here to the south, in between Touretsk and the Pokrovsk front line. Nothing major. But on the Pokrovsk front line itself, Russian forces made one advancement. They recaptured the entire town of Shevchenko. We have no other changes from this part of the front line. No Ukrainian advancements, no Russian advancements, nothing else. But Russian forces are slowly reactivating their forces on this part of the front line, such as this right here. But one area Russian forces have restarted their attacks in pretty strong succession is coming from the southern part of Donetsk. Russian forces to the north of Veliky Novosilky captured two tree lines right here to the south of Vesele. Russian forces also made an advancement, capturing several tree lines to the north of Rozdolny, and they're slowly pushing towards the towns of Bahatar and these line villages up here. Ukrainian forces made two counterattacks in this part of the front line. Ukrainian forces were able to counterattack and recapture some ground here, including pushing back into the town of Constantinople. Russian forces also advanced right here to the south and captured this tree line right here. They also made a very big advancement up here to the north of Andreevka, and are closing in on this small pocket right here. The Russian forces are obviously trying to capture this area right here and close off this pocket, and they are now doing so as we speak. That is all for this part of the front line. We do have one more area of interest, and that is the Russian small-scale offensive coming from western Zaporizhzhia. Russian forces continue to advance over here, and they have now pushed into the town of Stepove and almost captured the entirety of it. They also pushed into both towns of Sherbaki and Mali Sherbaki. Both of these towns have now been pushed into by the Russian forces, and fighting is now taking place over them. Russian forces are now beginning to flank and also push into the town of Lobkove. Russian forces do also have just like the Oskil front line up here. Russian forces definitely have some sort of plans for this part of the front line for the Zaporizhzhia front line. And in general, we can now see Russian forces are beginning to attack pretty consistently across the entire front line, from all the way up here. Well, actually, I should say all the way from Kursk all the way down to Zaporizhzhia. Russian forces are now attacking on multiple front lines, not in any major offensive, but they are launching attacks and taking ground wherever they can. This seems to indicate the Russian forces are now looking for their next offensive. They are preparing for their next major offensive and are trying to pick where that offensive is where they're going to do that next offensive. That's why they are launching attacks everywhere to try and figure out where the Ukrainians are weaker, where they can exploit some opportunities, and just in general, where Russian forces can see more success in the near future after their victory in Kursk. So where Russian forces going to turn their eyes next? My guess it'll probably be either a return to the southern Donetsk front line and the Pokrovsk front, or they might have plans for the Oskil front and the Kharkiv front. So my personal guess for where Russian forces are going to launch their next major offensive, it's going to be either Kharkiv or they're going to return back here towards the Pokrovsk and southern Donetsk front. These are my two guesses. So this is two, and one up here. So these are my guesses for where Russian forces will turn their eyes next. But anyway, guys, that is all for this update. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe, hit the bell notification, and leave a like and leave a comment. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.